All right, so we can talk about anything y'all want to. Again, it's Ask Us Anything. We usually start off the show with an email, so let's go ahead and put that first email up that we got from one of our viewers. Okay, this says, is there a limit on how long an insurance company can take to send an adjuster? I was in an accident last week. The police found the other driver at fault, and her insurance keeps saying they cannot do anything until they get her statement. If she's not cooperating with them, who makes her? I have no car right now. And that's from Henry. And Henry, that's a great question, and that's something that we deal with more often than you think. You know, the question, how long does it take? There's really no set time. It's just got to be a reasonable period of time. If you're involved in a wreck, if you read the fine print of your contract's going to say you have to notify us of this wreck as soon as possible. But usually if you get past a week or two or three, you start to run into a situation where you could potentially jeopardize your coverage for not cooperating with the insurance company, which is to call them and tell them what's going on. But in this case, Brian, it sounds to me like the person that caused the wreck is not responding, and the insurance company says they got to talk to that person first. Why is that?
Well, they have an obligation to investigate what actually happened. So if it's a rear-end car wreck, there shouldn't be much investigation, but the insurance company still only wants to pay what their insured is legally responsible for. So in a rear-end collision, yeah, they want to talk to their insured to make sure there wasn't something that made a sudden stop and confirm the facts of the case, confirm their insured is responsible before they actually start paying things out. But when we run into this, we want to give the crash report to the insurance company. Right. Sometimes our clients give a statement, but that's rare. Or if there's video or a witness statement, we want to facilitate that so that the insurance company who's responsible, if their insured is not cooperating with them, we're giving them sufficient evidence so they know, even though they haven't spoken with their insured, we're proving that their insured is responsible. Right.
Usually the reason, Henry, that they're taking a little bit of time and they want to talk with their insurers, it's exactly what Brian said. They want to find out what the facts of the wreck were. Not every automobile wreck or every loss is as clear-cut as I'm sitting at a stoplight and I get rear-ended by a car that wasn't paying attention. There's crashes where somebody said, I had the green light. The other person said, no, I had the green light. You know, there may be witnesses that can say which party was right or wrong. There may be disputes on who might have had the lane, who might have had the right-of-way. Those are all the things that the insurance companies want to try to figure out, because if their insured is responsible for the wreck, then that's going to trigger a requirement that they offer coverage under their policy that could include payments for property damage. It could include payments for injuries, lost wages. And so before they pay that out, they have an obligation to investigate it to make sure that they're only paying for what it is they're responsible for. And usually that starts with, hey, we want to talk with our insured. But even if they can't talk with their insured, a crash report, photographs, video, witness statements. There's a lot of times where we actually provide that information because the other side isn't cooperating, but we want there to be coverage. Correct. For our client.
That is the biggest thing is we do want there to be coverage, but especially Les did insurance defense before he came to the good guys. We understand what the insurance company's obligations are. So if we can make their decision on who is responsible easier, whether it's video, witness statements, crash report, whatever it is, we try to facilitate that.
Right, right. So that's hopefully that answered your question, Henry. But I appreciate you sending that in. But yeah, Brian, you know, insurance companies, whenever you get a claim, you know, one of the things he's obviously frustrated with is it's taken 3 weeks now. What are some of the other things that you can do for a client like Henry when they don't have a car? What are their options if, you know, my car's been wrecked, it's been totaled, we still haven't gotten any response from the other side? Really, what can he do in order to try to put himself back into a normal position?
Well, a lot of times there are two insurance companies whenever there's a two-car motor vehicle accident. And if you have collision coverage or rental reimbursement on your own policy, you can actually go through, you'll eat the deductible, and I always explain to my clients how that actually works. But essentially, you can go through your own insurance because for collision coverage, they don't necessarily have to confirm everything. They know you were in a car wreck. It's no-fault coverage essentially for collision. They'll get your vehicle totaled out. They'll pay you for the rental, and then you now have that money, hopefully, to make a new down payment on a new car. And then your insurance company actually goes after the responsible insurance company and gets reimbursed not only for what they paid, but your deductible and anything for your rental. And so sometimes it's a lot easier to go with your insurance company, but it depends. Some people have collision coverage. If you have a loan on your vehicle, you do have collision coverage.
At least you're supposed to.
You're supposed to, yes.
So, you know, collision coverage is you're involved in a wreck. It could be your fault. It could be the other person's fault, but it's coverage that you pursue under your own policy. But that's not required coverage in the state of Florida. So what happens if somebody says, they go into the insurance agent's office or they get online and their mindset is, I want to get the cheapest insurance I can get in order to be legal. And they get involved in a wreck like Henry was involved in, and the other side is dragging their feet. And I've got the bare minimum insurance. What do they have?
Well, the bare minimum in Florida is $10,000 in property damage and then $10,000 in personal injury protection. So for property damage coverage, if I cause a wreck and damage somebody's vehicle, I have coverage up to $10,000, which for vehicles nowadays, that's
not a lot.
A drop in the bucket
Right.
for anything for 2020 or after. And then the PIP or personal injury protection benefits, that's $10,000 in benefits that are available to an occupant of the vehicle, the named insured, or if you hit a pedestrian who doesn't have car insurance, to pay medical bills and a percentage of lost income.
Right. Now, you didn't mention collision coverage.
No, so in Florida, you're only required to carry that property damage and PIP. So in that situation, if you have the minimum insurance and you're hit by somebody who is not cooperating with their insurance company or is uninsured or it's a hit and run, then you don't have coverage for anything for your vehicle at all.
Right, right. And that's one of the problems we see with our insurance scheme as it's set up right now is the bare minimum coverage that a lot of people go into, and they really don't realize what it is they're asking for. I mean, they want to do the right thing. They want to follow the law. They go to a website or they go to an agent and they say, look, I've got a limited budget. This is what I can spend. And oftentimes they end up with a bare minimum insurance, not really realizing how minimum it really is when it comes time if a claim occurs and you need a rental car or you need to have your own vehicle fixed or you're going to have medical expenses above and beyond what your basic carries. I mean, it really does leave a lot of people coming up short.
It can. The minimum insurance in Florida doesn't really provide any protection for you, but our legislature has stuck with that since I've been a lawyer more than a decade. I think every other state except one, you're required to carry insurance to where if you hurt somebody, you're covered, and then coverage is a whole other can of worms. But our legislature has decided that you can basically have pretty much no insurance to protect yourself as the minimum requirement. A lot of people, they just want to make sure they comply with the law, and that's all they get.
Right, until something happens, and then they realize that, oh, what do you mean that person doesn't have coverage to pay for my injuries? It wasn't my fault.
No, and that is, I don't want to say extremely common, but given the full moon week, I would say over the past month or so, I'm running into cases where people are hurt, they don't have the type of coverage to help them, that coverage, and then whoever caused the accident, either we don't know who they are, or they have the minimum coverage, or they are uninsured, and there's very limited things we can do to help them out.
Right, yeah, you're basically left with your option is you can file a claim against the individual, but then it's a matter of how do I get the money out of this person, and if it's somebody that's driving around with a minimum amount of insurance, the general thinking is that they don't really have a stack of cash laying around, they don't have a lot of assets that can be used to satisfy judgment, but not only that, you actually have to go and get a judgment against them before you can really force any sort of a collection effort, and even that is going to take a lot of time and carry a lot of expense.
Yeah, and so most situations, and we run into a few exceptions, but most situations, if people don't have insurance, they don't have the ability to pay money to pay for a claim. Even if it's $1,000 in medical bills, if somebody isn't paying enough for, over the minimum coverage, they can't do that. And for us to go get a judgment on a traditional car wreck case can be 15 to 20 grand, and the other party has no obligation to offer you a dime until you get a judgment against them, and now they have a legal obligation to pay you. In Florida, we're covering Ask Us Anything. There's a lot of protected assets.
Right.
So if you cause a car wreck, people can't come after your home.
If it's a homestead.
Right. People can't come after you if you're the head of household. If you don't qualify over a certain amount, they can't come after certain wages.
Right.
So there's a lot of protections in Florida to where if somebody doesn't have insurance or has the minimum insurance, you can't really go after these people. You can't really touch a lot of their assets. You can't touch their retirement accounts. And there's reasons for that, and they're good reasons, but you can run into issues if you're not insuring yourself.
Right, right. So we've just given our little tutorial there on insurance. We can talk a little bit more about some other coverages that you might want to consider if you're looking at reviewing your insurance policy. that's something we can absolutely talk about.